You know that feeling when you're doing everything right and somehow it still feels wrong? Not wrong like you made a mistake. Wrong like the floor itself shifted under you and now standing upright takes effort you didn't used to need. Your routine feels heavier. Your responses feel sharper. The things that used to ground you now feel like they're draining something you can't name. And the strangest part is that nothing catastrophic happened. Life just kept going. And somewhere in all that forward motion, something in you started responding differently. This is what happens when normal life starts creating toxic behavior. Not because you're broken, not because you failed to cope, but because the conditions you're living in have been asking more from you than they give back, and your nervous system has been taking notes. What you're experiencing isn't a personality flaw. It's a functional response to a functional problem. The toxicity isn't in you. It's in the mismatch between what your body needs to feel safe and what your life is currently structured to provide. Let's talk about what that actually means. When we hear the word toxic, we think of something intentional, something cruel or manipulative or out of control, but most toxic behavior doesn't start that way. It starts as protection. It starts when you've been managing more than you realized for longer than you noticed, and your system starts making decisions for you because waiting for conscious choice feels too slow, too risky, too expensive. You start snapping at people you care about. You withdraw when you used to reach out. You say yes when you mean no, or no when you actually want to say yes, because somewhere along the way, honesty started feeling like exposure. You become rigid about things that didn't used to matter, or you stop caring about things that used to define you. And it's not that you decided to behave this way, it's that your body decided you needed a different set of rules to survive what's in front of you. Here's what most people miss. Toxic behavior doesn't require toxic circumstances. It requires sustained demand without sustained recovery. It requires a life that looks fine on paper, but feels like walking uphill in both directions. It requires you to function in a state that your nervous system interprets as threat, even when nothing visibly dangerous is happening. And the tricky part is that this kind of threat doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with a diagnosis or a clear start date. It just accumulates. A job that asks you to be available at all hours. A relationship where you've become the one who holds everything together. A living situation that never quite feels like rest. A social circle that drains more than it replenishes. A version of yourself you've been performing for so long that you forgot it wasn't supposed to be permanent. Your body doesn't differentiate between a lion chasing you and a life that never lets you fully land. Both get coded as not safe to soften. And when it's not safe to soften, your system starts choosing behaviors that prioritize immediate survival over long-term connection. You become controlling because unpredictability feels unbearable. You become avoidant because engagement feels like one more thing you have to manage. You become critical because it's easier to find fault in others than to admit how much fault you're finding in yourself. You become performative because being real feels like handing someone a weapon. These aren't character defects. They're adaptations. And they worked. For a while. They got you through. But now they're running on autopilot, even when the original threat has shifted or softened or disappeared entirely. The moment you realize that normal life has been creating toxic behavior is the moment you have to confront something most people avoid. The possibility that you've been functional in a way that's no longer sustainable. You've been competent, reliable, present, and capable. And all of that has been true. But competence isn't the same as capacity. And just because you can keep going doesn't mean your system isn't paying a price for it. What you're feeling now, this toxicity, this sharpness, this distance from yourself, isn't proof that you're falling apart. It's proof that you've been holding it together with more force than you realized, and your body is starting to push back. Think about the person who's always been the calm one, the steady one, the one everyone comes to when things fall apart. They don't rage or collapse or demand attention. They just quietly stop being available. They cancel plans. They stop answering texts. They show up physically, but not emotionally. And when someone asks if they're okay, they say yes, because the truth feels too big and too small at the same time. That's not avoidance. That's a nervous system that's been in overdrive for so long that shutting down is the only way it knows how to protect you from burning out entirely. Or think about the person who suddenly becomes hypercritical. Not cruel, just exact. Nothing anyone does is quite right. Every choice feels loaded and every conversation becomes a negotiation. They're not trying to be difficult. They're trying to control the one thing they can because everything else feels like it's slipping. That's not toxicity. That's what happens when uncertainty becomes intolerable and your brain decides that rigidity is safer than flexibility. Here's the insight most people never get. Toxic behavior isn't about what you're doing. It's about what you're no longer able to do. It's not that you're withdrawing. It's that you don't have the capacity to connect without cost. It's not that you're controlling. It's that you don't have the safety to trust what you can't predict. It's not that you're harsh. It's that softness feels like a risk you can't afford. The behavior is the symptom. The problem is the context. And until you see that, you'll keep trying to fix yourself instead of questioning the life you're trying to fit yourself into. And this is where it gets complicated. Because once you understand what's happening, you also have to understand why it keeps happening. You'd think awareness would be enough. You'd think once you see the pattern, you'd just stop. But it doesn't work that way. Because the pattern isn't just in your behavior. It's in your identity. It's in the version of yourself you've been protecting. The person who doesn't need help. The person who can handle it. The person who's strong enough to carry what others can't. And if you stop behaving that way, even for a moment, you have to face the question underneath, who am I if I'm not the one holding everything together? That's the real cost, not the behavior itself, but what you believe you'll lose if you stop. You'll lose respect. You'll lose value. You'll lose the only role that's ever made you feel necessary, and so you keep going. You keep performing strength even when it's making you brittle. You keep offering care even when you're running on empty. You keep saying you're fine even when fine stopped being true months ago. And the toxicity isn't the anger or the coldness or the distance. The toxicity is the belief that you don't deserve to stop. Let me be direct for a second. You can't out-discipline a nervous system that's in survival mode. You can't think your way into feeling safe when your environment is still asking more than it's giving. And you can't fix toxic behavior by trying harder to be better. Because the problem isn't effort. The problem is that your body is doing exactly what it's supposed to do when life stops feeling livable. It's choosing protection over connection. And it will keep choosing that until something in your environment changes enough for connection to feel safe again. So what does that mean? It means peace isn't something you achieve by managing yourself better. It's something you create by changing the conditions you're living in. And sometimes that's big. A job, a relationship, a living situation. But sometimes it's small. It's saying no without explaining. It's letting something be incomplete. It's stopping before you're empty instead of after. It's choosing rest even when it feels unproductive. It's letting someone else hold something you've been carrying alone. It's not about fixing the behavior. It's about removing the need for it. And here's what that looks like in real time. It looks like noticing when you're about to snap and pausing long enough to ask, what am I actually protecting right now? It looks like recognizing when you're withdrawing and asking, what would I need to feel safe enough to stay? It looks like catching yourself in rigidity and asking, what am I afraid will happen if I let go? These aren't therapy questions. They're navigation questions. Because once you see the pattern, you can start making different choices. Not perfect choices. Not transformed choices, just choices that move you slightly closer to what your body has been asking for all along. Permission to stop fighting. When normal life starts creating toxic behavior, the answer isn't to become a different person. It's to stop living in a way that requires you to be someone you're not. And that's not a fix. That's not a framework. That's just the truth. Your body isn't the problem. Your behavior isn't the problem. The problem is that you've been living in conditions that were never designed for a nervous system to thrive in, and you've been blaming yourself for the fallout. If any part of this felt true, leave a comment about what you recognized. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of clarity, because understanding this changes how you see yourself. See you next time.